Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I also sent Todd Eckloff my review of Steve Hassan's book.
Good morning. It's lively in here. It's great. Please stand and join me for number 177, Sakura. Cherry blooms, cherry blooms, cherry blooms are everywhere, like a cloud from out the sky. Mists of blossoms fill the air, cherries, cherries blossoming. Come and see, come and see. Let all now see and see. Cherry blooms, all the world their beauty sees. Yoshino is cherry land, Tatsuta for maple trees, Karasaki for the pine. Let us go, where pine trees greenly shine.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. I hope you're warm enough. I had to turn the heat on a little bit ago because it was cool in here, so hopefully it doesn't get too hot, but I want you to be comfortable for sure. But welcome those of you who are here in the space with us, as well as those who are joining us via Zoom and our live stream this morning to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where, as always, we join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world, or, as we say in short, to create community, find meaning, and live justly. So again, welcome to all of you. We're so glad to have you, and as always, embrace all that you bring with you to this space, to these spaces, your unique beliefs and background and lifestyle and experiences and differences, all those things that help make you who you are that aren't always welcome in other churches or other organizations. So welcome to one and all. The only announcement that I have this morning is our Social Justice Coordinating Council is asking for volunteers to help run our booth at this year's Pride Festival down in the park on Riverside. So if you're interested in doing that, that is in, I think, 3 weeks from now. There's a sign up at the table in the back. So you can sign up for that after the service if you will. That would be wonderful. And then I want to take a moment, as usual, to welcome our friends on Zoom. I think Shelley will put them up on screen for us so we can see them. Oh, nope, you can see me. I'm sorry. It's probably set to just my image or my window, the church window. Go to gallery view maybe, or maybe you've done that. Okay, well, nevertheless, yeah, that's what. Now there's an infinite number of windows. Wow, Shelley, that's overkill. There they are. There we go. I don't know if you guys saw that, but anyway, it's we were having a little fun at your expense. But welcome to you guys on Zoom. Who's with us today?
Well, we've got some of the usual gang, but we have a special guest who's just arrived, who is actually moving to Spokane. So the people in the face-to-face audience will soon get to know Michael Milkey, and I'll let him unmute and tell us a little about himself.
Hey, Michael, good to see you. You're not here yet in person, but good to see you on Zoom.
So a little about me. I've been UU since '78. Very active in environmental ministry. We built the biggest one in the denomination worldwide. And lived in Pullman, temporarily in Baton Rouge now, moving next week. As Todd knows, I've already joined and pledged to the Spokane Church and intend to be as active as possible and active in the, you tell me how to pronounce it, Todd, whatever is the other thing that you're doing. I mean, I don't know what.
I say NAUA, but I've heard it pronounced NAWA, and everything is appropriate except for what some of those at the UUA call it.
I will do NAWA because I think it's now, right? I'm going to use NAWA. Thank you. And I'll shut up for there. That's it.
All right. Hey, thank you. Good. Looking forward to seeing you again in person, Michael. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, and thanks to everybody on Zoom, as always, for joining us today. Why don't we continue the welcoming by taking a few minutes here at the start of our service for you to greet one another, those of you who are in the room, those of you who are on Zoom, and it's always great to get a text from some of those of you who might be streaming with us, live streaming. All right, I'm so sorry to break that up. We've got a pretty good crowd in here this morning for our early service and lots of good conversation. So sorry to stop you, but there'll be more opportunity as always after our service during social hours, so do stay for that. We're now going to move forward by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
The opening words are from Chief Joseph, whose name in Nez Perce means thunder traveling to higher areas. Let me be a free man, free to travel, free to stop, free to work, free to trade where I choose, free to choose my own teachers, free to follow the religion of my fathers, free to talk, think, and act for myself. And I will obey every law or submit to the penalty.
Please stand, join me for number 97. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. 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 A long way from home. A long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. A long way from home. A long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. A long way from home. A long way from home.
Thank you. Boy, I was thinking about that song in light of the opening words that Candace read. Let me be a free man, free to travel, free to stop, free to work, free to trade where I choose, free to choose my own teachers, free to follow the religion of my fathers, free to talk, think, and act for myself, and I will obey every law or submit to the penalty. And I was thinking, I was imagining somebody walking this world of now over 8 billion people and yet feeling alone, like they have no home. How can that be? How can that be? I mean, Chief Joseph, of course, felt that because he didn't have those freedoms. There's people living behind walls that don't have that freedom. There's people wanting to erect walls to keep people from having that freedom. And all of us face someone or some group or lots of someones and groups that want to control us in a way that prevents us from feeling like we're home, feeling like we're walking alone. And that ultimately is what really my sermon will be about today, on mind control. But anyway, that was a sad song, and those are poignant words to get us started today. So hopefully I'll say something fun later. But for now, we're going to kindle our candles of care. And we will kindle a candle today for all the sojourners on the planet who are walking with billions of people and yet somehow feel homeless and alone. The war and violence there, and for the people of Israel and the Palestinian people who are suffering from war and violence as well. That was about a motherless child. There's a lot of childless mothers today in the world too. So let's take a moment of silence on behalf of those that you might be thinking of, and you'd be welcome to name them aloud at this time if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. And we now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which helps sustain this community and our mission to the larger world.
Midnight moon and broken branches, counting my steps and taking those chances on love. Taking those chances on love again. Desert sunsets and endless beaches, dropping my guard and taking those chances on love. Taking those chances on love again. Taking those chances on love. Taking those chances on love again. Holiday hearts and songs unsung, treading softly, wowing up, taking those chances on love. Taking those chances on love again. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. lessons to learn. My soul's reborn and down, taking those chances on love. Taking those chances on love again. Taking those chances on love. Taking those chances on love. Taking those chances on love again and again. And again.
Thank you for such a beautiful song. This is a story about someone who actually took a second chance on love. It's called John Murray and the Winds of Change, and it's been adapted from a UUA religious education lesson. You never know which way the wind blows or what the wind will blow in. The wind can change directions and maybe change your life. That happened to John Murray. As a young man, John Murray had excellent fortune blow his way. He had a fine education, a steady job, a loving wife, and a young son. Life was good. And then suddenly, everything changed. John Murray's wife and their son became sick and died. John lost his job, lost all his money, and was put in jail because he could not pay his bills. John was a very religious man, a Universalist, who had even preached about loving God. Now, he felt like his life was over. Friends urged him to go someplace where he could start again. He sailed for America on a ship named the Hand in Hand. The wind blew the ship towards their destination, New York, but a dense, soupy fog rolled in and the ship ran aground in New Jersey instead. John and a few other brave people volunteered to leave the ship, go on land, and figure out how to get to New York. As John Murray stepped onto the unfamiliar shores of New Jersey, he couldn't help but feel a mix inside of apprehension and hope. It was swirling in him like the mist that enveloped the coastline. The Hand in Hand had veered off course, but perhaps fate had something else in store for him on this unexpected detour. As he trudged through the fog, his mind heavy with the weight of his recent losses, he stumbled upon a humble farmhouse nestled among the rolling hills. The sight of smoke curling from the chimney and the warm candlelight in the window offered a glimmer of peace in the midst of uncertainty. Who might he meet on his adventure? And you can find out during Children's Chapel, during the second service, or you can Google it after church.
For this morning's meditation, words from Vera Nazarian. Listen to the trees as they sway in the wind. Their leaves are telling secrets. Their bark sings songs of olden days as it grows around the trunks, and their roots give names to all things. Their language has been lost, but not the gestures.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Islands. From California to the Gulf Stream waters. Whoa, this land was made for you and me. Whoa, as I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that in the skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. Whoa, this land was made for you and me. Well, I've roamed and I've rambled, and I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts. And all around me, whoa, a voice was sounding. Whoa, this land was made for you and me. When the sun came shining, oh, as I was strolling, and the wheat fields waving, and the dust clouds rolling, as the fog was lifting, you know a voice was chanting. Whoa, this land was made for you and me. Whoa, as I went walking, you know I saw a sign there, and on the sign it said, whoa, no trespassing. But on the other side, you know that it said nothing. Whoa, that side was made for you and me. Well, in the squares of the city, in the shadow of a steeple, by the welfare office, oh, I saw my people. They stood there hungry. I stood there asking, whoa, this land was made for you and me. Well, nobody living can ever stop me as I go walking that freedom highway. Nobody living can make me turn back. Whoa, this land was made for you and me. Whoa, this land was made for you and me.
Wow. Lyle, Lonesome Lyle. That was a sermon in and of itself, man. I can't forget Madeline's nice whistling. I was completely envious. Like so much else musically, I cannot whistle a note. And I was so, yeah, it's terrible having dogs. I have to shout at them. Come! But no, that, I mean, just, you guys are amazing. And how special, you know, I mean, that's of course a classic, beautiful song by the great Woody Guthrie. But, you know, when a musician has both the style and the confidence in owning such an important song as your own, and singing it in a way that helps us really appreciate the lyrics in a way that we wouldn't if we were just sort of singing along in the familiar style. So just amazing. Thank you. Yeah. And by the way, speaking of first, this is the first time we've ever had a children's story end on a cliffhanger. So it is, yes. So stay tuned for next season. I know the end of that story, but I'm not going to share it. No. People will just have to go to Children's Chapel if they want to hear it. So one more piece of business before we go on. It says Muunies, and I actually was speaking or communicating with Steve Hassan, who is expert on cults. I'll talk more about him in a bit. And he sent me an email correcting me on my spelling of Muunies. Said, no, it's M-O-O. And I said, you didn't get my pun. Us UUs like to swap out the double U's for things. So this is a sermon really about Unitarian Universalism, not about the Muunies. And I thought I should let you know and not take for granted that everybody knows exactly what I'm thinking. So that's a pun. That's a pun. It's a dad joke. What's that? It's a stinker of a pun. Thank you very much. So when I was 18 years old, way back when, in 1982, I happened to be in New York City at the same time that Sung Young Moon, the founder and leader of the Muunies, formerly known as the Unification Church, conducted a mass wedding ceremony involving 2,000 couples. Now, this unusual event is memorable to me because it made national news, and I happened to be there in that area, at least when it did. But this was not the first, last, nor even largest such event. Just last year, the Unification Church united 8,000 couples. That's 16,000 individuals from 150 countries in one mass wedding. The Muunies have conducted such ceremonies fairly frequently since their first occurred in 1961. That's 7 years after Moon founded Unificationism. Not to be confused with Unitarianism or Universalism. And usually involving 2,000 to 2,500 couples or so. As an even younger teenager in the earlier 80s, my brother and I had befriended a couple who ran a local health food store in Pacifica, California, near the beach where we hung out. And they were Muunies and ran the shop on behalf of its owner, the Unification Church. They were completely open about their religion, their devotion to and reverence for Moon, whom they believed was the second coming of Jesus Christ, about the business being a source of revenue for their church, and about having met the day that they were married in 1974 during one of Moon's mass weddings. They'd never met or spoken to their Savior, but told us that shortly before the wedding, Moon walked about pointing his finger randomly at a man and then at a woman, indicating that they were to be married. And they were certain that when he looked at them, his divine wisdom allowed him to see deeply into their souls and know that they were destined for each other. As far as I could tell, that they got along well, they truly loved each other, and by then they even had a little girl that they had clearly adored. Yet even as an impressionable young teenager, whose beliefs as a Southern Baptist were no less nutty, I knew that their marriage could have been nothing more than the result of chance, due to the random finger pointing of a man who could not have deeply looked into their souls and likely did not see nor care the least about their humanity or their individual dignity. Today, in his provocative and courageous book, The Cult of Trump, psychologist and mind control expert Steve Hassan, who was himself once part of Moon's cult, considers Sun Myung Moon to have been a malignant narcissist, along with other cult leaders like L. Ron Hubbard from Scientology, Jim Jones from People's Temple, David Koresh from the Branch Davidians, Warren Jeffs from the Fundamentalist Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints, and Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, the Rajneesh movement, and Keith Rainier from NXIVM, kind of a, positive thinking guru. Hassan says they all fit a similar pattern. Grandiose, arrogant, bombastic, supremely confident, demanding of attention and admiration, rarely admitting a mistake. They were Trump, if you're interested in reading it. That one of my favorite thinkers, social psychologist Erich Fromm, coined this term, malignant narcissist, or malignant narcissism, to describe what he thought was the most severe mental sickness, one that represented the quintessence of evil. Anyone who knows Fromm's work understands why he might consider this the worst of evils, because it is the opposite of the humanistic ethic, which he considers the greatest good. And this is why he concludes that the sole criterion of ethical value ought to be human welfare, and that the unfolding and growth of every person ought to be the aim of all our social and political activities. So when an institution or individuals gain the kind of control over the minds and wills that Moon's mass weddings demonstrate, which denies others their own individual agency, it is rightly to consider the quintessence of evil. And malignant narcissist is a deserving name for the perpetrators of such evil. Tragically, the desire to control others so completely is itself a sign of a stunted personality, of an individual who is nowhere close to fully unfolding as a human being, right? Because we can't be a mature human being without empathy, without the ability to truly connect with others. As Fromm also says, the whole meaning of life is to develop into the individual that one potentially is. The duty to be alive is the same as the duty to become oneself. To do so, to fully develop our human potential, is to fully realize what he considers our greatest human power, the ability to love. But love is an activity, he says, not a passive affect. It's something we do, not a feeling. And it's something that we do unto others. The most fundamental kind of love, which underlies all types of love, Fromm says, is the sense of responsibility, care, respect, knowledge of any other human being, and the wish to further their life. That's what love is, the wish to further the lives of others. That's what love looks like. So how do we know if a person is fully able to love? By how one acts towards others. Does one work to free them or to control them? Envy, jealousy, ambition, any kind of greed are passions, Fromm says. But love is an action, the practice of a human power which can be practiced only in freedom and never as the result of a compulsion. But the psychologically and emotionally incomplete person, perhaps a malignant narcissist, if one is not growing at all, does the opposite. The most fundamental anxiety for every person is caused by the innate conflict between freedom and belonging. Each of us longs to connect with others without losing ourselves, and to be ourselves without losing our connection to others. If we can't overcome this tension by fully developing our capacity to love ourselves, and to love others, by working to care, respect, know, and further the life of those we love, then we may attempt to do so through the false power of control, the delusion of control. We connect with and know others while maintaining our autonomy in this way, by controlling them. That's the sadistic solution. Or by letting them control us. That's the masochistic solution. We feel connected, an individual, in a strange way. We take on the personality of another individual, or take and swallow the personalities of other individuals. There is one way, a desperate one, to know the secret, Fromm says. It is that of complete power over another person. The power which makes him do what we want, feel what we want, think what we want, which transforms him into a thing, our possession. Has anybody here not encountered such a person in your life? Unfortunately, there's a lot of undeveloped people out there, and attracted to politics. A lot of them are attracted to politics, right? Because that's a power position. Not that I'm naming any names, but The Cult of Trump's a good book. The most confounding and troubling facet of all this for me is not the malignant narcissist of the world, although they're disturbing enough, but that so many people, thousands, millions in some cases, are so easily influenced by them. That's the great mystery. And I became acutely aware of this conundrum during my recent February sabbatical after watching 3 docuseries on various cults. 2 were UFO cults, and the third was about a very obviously troubled young woman who claimed to be God. The beliefs of all 3 cults were so obviously ludicrous that it was unimaginable that any person, let alone dozens to thousands, could have believed them. And the control that the cult leaders held over them was so complete that in one case, its members committed mass suicide. Fortunately for me, one of those interviewed about this particular cult was Dr. Steve Hassan, the cult and mind control expert I've already spoken of. And I immediately purchased 2 of his books in search of answers, Combating Mind Control and The Cult of Trump, both of which I highly recommend. Early in the first of these, Hassan defines mind control as any system of influence that disrupts an individual's authentic identity and replaces it with a false new one. Mind control replaces an individual's authentic identity and replaces it with a new one. We see this demonstrated by the couple that I spoke of moments ago who, rather than choosing whom they would marry for themselves, allowed a person they'd never met to make this monumental decision for them. But being influenced by others isn't necessarily destructive, right? We all influence one another, which is why Hassan explains, I also use the term undue influence. Undue because these practices violate personal boundaries and human integrity, as well as ethics and often the law. It's unethical influence, undue influence that then requires the destruction of an individual's will and sense of self. Mind control, again, is any system of influence that disrupts an individual's authentic identity and replaces it with a false new one. I'm reminded of the words spoken by the Ministry of Truth to Winston Smith after his arrest for committing thought crimes in George Orwell's dystopian horror novel, 1984. We shall squeeze you empty, and then we shall fill you with ourselves. We shall squeeze you empty, and then we shall fill you with ourselves. Hassan says the essence of mind control is that it encourages dependence and conformity and discourages autonomy and individuality. Individualism is fiercely discouraged. But the line that most caught my attention in combating mind control is Hassan's assertion that even mainline religious organizations can have destructive aspects, use undue influence, or become destructive cults. Even mainstream religions can become destructive cults. Is this what's happened to Unitarian Universalism? Has it fallen under the spell of a mind control cult? Does this explain why so many people that I thought I knew, colleagues I've known for years, individuals who were once members of this very church, suddenly began behaving in ways that I would never have imagined? Have they lost their autonomy and individuality because of an organization that encourages dependence and conformity? In these groups, Hassan says, basic respect for the individual is secondary to the leader's whims and ideology. People are manipulated and coerced to think, feel, and behave in a single right way. Individuals become totally dependent on the group and lose the ability to act or think on their own. To figure out if an organization falls under the category of mind control cult, Hassan has developed the BITE model, an acronym for behavioral, information, thought, and emotional control. A mind control group that uses any or all of these to unduly influence others is at least suspect. Hassan refers to any group in which mind control is used in destructive ways as simply a cult. So if the Unitarian Universalist Association and any of its member congregations are unethically controlling behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions within their organizations and among their members, then by this definition, they are a mind control cult. So using the BITE model, I've concluded that this is precisely the case, that the UUA uses all of these categories to some extent to unduly influence its members. Controlling the behavior of others in the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association, is difficult given that Unitarian Universalism is historically rooted in the ideals of freedom, congregational autonomy, and human dignity. For the past several years, however, the UUA leadership has been changing this by creating a punitive culture of fear, intolerance, and shame, and by transforming itself from a member service organization into what it euphemistically calls a covenantal religion. At the 2015 UUA General Assembly, so you know I'm not making this stuff up, moderator Jim Keyes announced a new task force, explaining the task force was charged with changing the culture of the UUA from one of a member service administration to one of mutual covenanting. Keyes also spoke of reshaping how our congregations are governed, elated that, as he said, 8 districts in the South and Central Northeast have voted to dissolve and defer governance to the UUA. Whoopee! Yay! Additionally, it now has complete control of ministerial education, certification, and placement, by which it has slowly infiltrated the top leadership of its member congregations, ministers who indoctrinate them with a new illiberal ideology and who forbid contradicting views or allowing them to be expressed. Those ministers who dare protest or resist this shift are increasingly accused of causing harm and of being out of covenant. Between the UU Association's establishment in 1961 and 2020, only 9 ministers had been permanently disfellowshipped from ministry, mostly for sexually and financially inappropriate behavior, as we might expect. Since 2020, 5 ministers have been disfellowshipped for bullying behavior or creating hostile work environments, which means that they said something the UUA authorities disagreed with. I know because I was the first. Speech is now considered a form of harm and violence. Additionally, in 2020, the UUA began granting ministers full fellowship instead of what was formerly called final fellowship. Final meant that a minister was free of any further certification requirements. Full means they are bound to certain continuing education requirements as deemed necessary by the UUA throughout their entire careers. As its 2023 document explaining these changes states, we seek a different system, one based in relationship development and a commitment to lifelong learning. I consider this to mean lifelong control. I will learn what I want to learn on my own. Thank you very much. The same document now defines a minister as someone granted fellowship by the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, the MFC, which is contrary to our age-old tradition of exclusive congregational ordination. The UUA does not make ministers. You do. Our congregations do. The document also states the UUA will approve only those whose work is theologically grounded, expresses Unitarian Universalist values and principles, and reflects commitments to an anti-oppression collective liberation and ongoing learning. To be a UU minister these days, you better have learned your lessons. Regarding the control of information, since around 2021, the UU World magazine has completely eliminated its letters to the editor section. This section was once 5 to 10 pages long. But after my 2019 book, the Gadfly Papers made many aware of what is happening, a policy was adopted forbidding my name from even ever being published in the magazine, which necessarily eliminated most of the letters expressing concern. Rather than publishing only positive letters, the magazine simply stopped publishing all letters. The result is that now there is no place for feedback, honest or otherwise. Information is one-directional from the UUA to its members, and that information has become little more than propaganda. Although the UUA is now claiming it has always been a covenantal religion rather than a liberal religion, this false claim reflects a concerted effort to eliminate freedom of individual thought. That's the thought control. Covenant is but the UUA's covert way of creating something that Reverend Frederick Muir says has eluded Unitarian Universalism, a doctrine of church. As Muir explicitly stated in his 2012 Berry Street lecture to UU ministers, we cannot do both covenant and individualism. We cannot do both covenant and individualism. As mentioned during the 2016 UUA General Assembly, the moderator again held up one of Muir's books while announcing this new task force that was called the Task Force on Recovenanting, charged with changing the culture of the UUA from one of a member service administration to one of a mutual covenanting association. Right. If you're wondering what covenanting means, none of us know. We're not being told, right? It's intentionally vague. Then in 2018, a UUA study action issue was approved stating, decentering whiteness calls us to decenter individual dignity for our collective liberation. Word salad, I know. But bottom line, we have to decenter individual dignity for our collectivism, right? For collective liberation. And in a 2019 UU World article, UU President Susan Frederick Gray wrote that covenant is the antidote to individualism. Right? Again, Muir said we can't do both. We can't do covenant and individualism both. So statements like these are really enough to prove both the purpose of this term and that it has only been widely used to define Unitarian Universalism in recent years. Right? They made the announcement in 2015. This is what we're doing. We're going to change it from a member service organization to a covenantal organization. As Hassan says, in a cult, individualism is fiercely discouraged, and groupthink takes over. In the UUA, the use of logic, of thinking well, itself is highly discouraged. Talk about thought control. A 2019 letter condemning me and my book states, which was, by the way, affirmed by hundreds of UU ministers, states, a zealous commitment to logic and reason over all other forms of knowing, we're not sure what those are, is one of the foundational stones of white supremacy culture. So now even logic is demonized, ad hominem attacked into being worthless. And it says ideas and language can indeed be forms of violence and cause real harm. And the predictable freedom of speech arguments are commonly weaponized to perpetuate oppression and inflict further harm. So freedom of speech, logic are out. Another public letter of condemnation states, we cannot ignore the fact that logic has often been employed in white supremacy culture to stifle dissent, minimize expressions of harm, and to require those who suffer to prove the harm by the culture's standards. So reason and thinking for ourselves is out. And church doctrine is in. Finally, the emotional control exhibited by the UUA is enforced by a growing culture of fear, shame, guilt, and punishment. People fear being called out as a racist, homophobic, transphobic, ableist, and so on, and are rewarded by signaling their own virtue by calling out others or joining in the public flogging of dissenters. or at the very least, keeping quiet while we watch it happen. We don't have time to go into the new and flawed ideology at the center of UUism today. Suffice it to say that it is itself a racist and segregationist ideology that believes, as Coleman Hume says in his new book, The End of Race Politics, it believes that race matters in a deep and enduring way. Race is central to improving our society. The sharp racial classifications are a necessary part of a just society, that blackness and whiteness encompass far more than descriptions of skin color and ancestry, habits, and character. At the same time, the emotions of people with identities that have been historically marginalized are treated as if they have emotional supremacy, and that arguing with them is itself racist and harmful. So fear, shame, guilt, and illogic are means of emotional control that has become indicative of the UUA culture. Now, my issue with the UUA, however, is not this ideology, but that those of us who disagree with it are no longer free to say so. That's the problem. Like Chief Joseph said, I just want to be free to say what I need to say. Discourse has been replaced with demonization, and that's why I believe the UUA has, by any definition, become a mind control cult, because they're trying to control our minds, what we think. And that's how you control speech, is by getting at the mind, right? So what's the takeaway from all this? To answer this, I want to turn again to the wisdom of Steve Hassan, who, having recovered from a cult himself, and after years of experience helping others to do so, he doesn't consider himself a deprogrammer, but is simply, as he puts it, involved in helping group members think for themselves and make their own decisions. That's what he's doing to help former cult members, help them to think and make decisions on their own. Nobody wants to be in a cult. Becoming part of a cult is more of a boiling frog situation. Mind control is the boiling water that slowly overtakes them without them ever being aware of what's happened until it's too late. Yet Hassan says, I have come to believe that human beings are all born with an authentic self, as well as a desire for love, fairness, truth, and meaning. It is something that no group can program out of a person, and therefore there is always hope for real healing. And that's our role now as religious liberals, to remain true to our commitment to individual worth and dignity, and to maintaining communities where people are truly free to think and express themselves, and to promoting that's the same for our entire world. That's why religious liberalism exists. The UUA has become a mind control cult, but we remain free thinkers, and our congregations remain autonomous from any church authority. Because of our continued presence in the world, we must be here now to help others think for themselves and to make their own decisions. Again, should they escape the clutches of mind control, whether it's by leaving the UUA or waking up from other cults, be they religion, political, or secular, or caught in a cult of one person, a malignant narcissist, who has overtaken their ability to think and act for themselves. It doesn't take much to understand that the whole world is at war right now over which idea will dominate. Not which ideas will dominate, which idea will dominate. Rather than realizing that there can never be just one dominant idea, and that to find peace we have to tolerate, maybe even learn from our many differences. And that's what liberalism is all about, and that's why we're here, to uplift our common humanity and dignity by fostering freedom and reason and tolerance so that all of us can become our best selves. Thank you. Thank you.
Please stand. Join me for Let All the Beauty We Have Known, number 326. Let all the beauty we have known illuminate our hearts and minds, rejoice in wonders daily shown, in faith and joy and love that binds. We celebrate with singing hearts the loveliness of sky and earth, the inspiration of the arts, the miracle of every birth. Life's music and its poetry surround and bless us through our days. For these we sing in harmony, together giving thanks and praise.
For the benediction, the words of Abhijit Naskar, the author of The Art of Neuroscience in Everything. Abandon the ceremonies and become an awakened soul, a soul that sees no color but the color of joy, no religion but the religion of love, no language but the language of compassion. Become compassionate, my friend. Become brave, my friend. That is true religion. There is nothing else. Amen. Blessed be. Salam alaikum and shalom.